Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a sort of Techo Kaigi or a update on the planners and journals that I have been using this year. So I have been a bullet journaler since college, and then when I finished college it wasn't really working for me anymore and I kind of had a crisis and started trying new things with my planner system because I needed different things in my life after school. And so I'm gonna walk you through how my system has evolved this year. I started with just one book, one kind of two, and I have now ended up with 5 that I do use regularly. Like, these are pretty much all used every day, which seems like a lot, but for me, the separation of things is really nice. And you'll see what I mean when I get into this. So I'm gonna take these away because at the beginning of the year, I started with just this one book. This is the Midori One Day, One Page Diary. The pages look like this. They are partially lined on one side, they have some dots at the top, and it's undated. The only part of this that's dated is the monthly calendar. So that's really all there is to this planner, is monthly calendar and a whole bunch of daily pages that look like this. That's it. As you can see, I still have a lot of this left. I have only made it through about this much. And I'll kind of explain to you why. So at the beginning of the year, I originally thought that I wanted everything in one book. Like literally everything. Planning, journaling, notes, just all of it in one place. And January came around, I started with this journal, and I'll show you what I started doing. The monthly pages I was using as kind of a memory keeping. So I would write something significant that happened that day, and then I had habit tracking here. So this is January. You'll see that the habit tracking goes away. You'll understand why soon. And then I kind of fell off of using it for a while. Pick it up once in a while, some more memories once in a while. So clearly that wasn't working for me. The very first daily page I was using as an ink log. And then this was kind of the setup that I was using. Yeah, so this was the very first week using this. So the idea was that on this left side here, every week I would draw out this kind of view and draw these terrible lines. Up here, I was writing what events I had that week. Here I was writing a task list, and then here I was doing habits down at the bottom. And so this is called, I think, like a running to-do list, or sometimes called Alistair method, I think. And I would put down what day that task needed to be done on, and you can move things around really easily. And this was how I was doing my weekly planning before this new year, and it was working well. And then on the daily pages, I would write my to-do list at the top, and then I could just journal throughout the day. And I liked this for a while. I really liked that I could kind of just do whatever in here. I started to feel some pain going back and forth, flipping between these pages to see the weekly. I was starting to get sick of drawing this out every week, and pretty quickly, let's see, week 4 comes around, so we're getting towards the end of January, and here I have written that I want Hobonichi weeks. So, you can see I go through this week, and by the end of the week I've ordered a Hobonichi weeks and migrated into it. So this was not working for me in the way that I had it before, but once I switched to the Hobonichi weeks for my planning aspects, this became a daily journal. And that actually did work for me. Just writing about my day in here and not having to fill up a whole page. I could use multiple pages if I wanted. I could put pictures in. I could write about random things, make lists, and I actually really liked this. So that's what this is for now. We can pop all the way forward. And I will write about random things in here sometimes when I just need to figure things out. I will just fill up a bunch of pages working through it. A lot of the time I'm talking about journals and what journals are working and what's not. So this is now how I use this. Here's today, or this week. So now I just use this for long form journaling and kind of morning pages. So that's what this book is for. And as I mentioned, the Hobonichi weeks entered my system. I realized I was having trouble with the weekly and daily planning in the Midori, and I thought that a different layout would work really well for me, and it has. So the reason I like the Hobonichi weeks is because this layout allows you to have 1 week on a full page spread. So you can see your dailies, and then you have this blank section on the right hand side to put whatever you want. And so I did some trial and error, and I've ended up at a system that looks like this. The way that I use this now is I have divided down the middle here. The left hand side I put events that are happening. On the right hand side I put a task list for each day. And then on the right hand side here I section it off for a few lists that I like to use during the week. Here at the top is where I have my habits. So I just weekly habit track here. Under that I have a section to write down what meals we're gonna eat during the week. This week has been crazy, so we actually don't have any meals at home, which is unusual. Under that I have what things I wanna do on my socials that week, so things I wanna post on my Instagram. Under that I have a section for commonplacing, so these are ideas that I get for things I wanna write about or things I want to research and write in my commonplace book. And then this whole section in the bottom, I just have free to write down tasks, things that need to get done during the week. I will take things from here and move them to my daily task lists. And that's basically how that works. That's it, that's the system. The monthly calendars I use for tracking when I start and finish books. And then on the left here, every Monday I write down where I'm at in each book that I'm currently reading. I tried habit tracking monthly in here and that didn't work very well for me. It didn't last very long, but I did book tracking in here for a long time. This is moved to a different journal and I will talk about that when we get there, but I recently started doing content planning in here. So now each day I just write down the things that I'm posting on my various social media accounts. And that's how I use that now. And Hobonichi Weeks has in the back these extra note pages. So this one I use for writing my ink log. I have an ink log in every single journal that I have. And then I tried doing a daily log in here. This was working for me, but I moved it to a different journal, and I will talk about that later as well. And now I use this to content plan. So what I do is I write down my different accounts, my journaling account, my reading account, my YouTube, and what things I'd like to post or things that I'm working on for that. There's also the My 100 in the back, which I have kept up on writing down the books that I read, but also I have transitioned this to another journal. We'll get there. And then I wanted to track shows and movies that I was watching, but I didn't keep up on it. I actually do really wish that I had kept up on this, and I might just jump back in and start writing down what I remember. But that's what I do there. And then the 365-day check-off sheet. I really like this idea, but I just could not keep up with it on a daily basis. So the idea was to use my Zig dot markers. They look like this. They have just a regular nib on one side, and then they have this dot side that makes these really awesome dots. And so the idea was to use this, and every day I was gonna write down which hobby of mine I partook in that day. And I really liked that idea, but it was just really, really hard to keep up with. So if you would like to steal that idea and you can keep up with it on a daily basis, please be my guest. I'm not sure what I'm going to use this page for next year, but I have time to think about it. So that's my Hobonichi weeks. Since January up until now, which is August, I've been using this exactly the same. My weekly spreads pretty much look exactly the same, and it works really, really well for me. So this will be coming back in 2024. And from that point, I decided in about March or April that I wanted a commonplace book. And that is when I purchased the Hobonichi original A6 Techo. This is the Spring Start edition. I'll walk you through how I use this. On the daily page, the idea was that I could write about anything, and then I would use this index in the front to write what was on that page. I'm gonna try in the second half of the year to come up with something to use on these calendars, but for now, I'm not doing anything. And then into the daily pages. So the way that I was using this monthly page was to write some goals, to write down the books that I'm reading, and to write about which pens I have inked currently. And then the idea of this commonplace book was to write just about anything that I wanted, pretty much. Things that I'd want to reference later, lists, notes. Here I did a 23 books that I want to read in 2023. This one is books that I've bought for every month of the year. This is a reading spread, so the book, some information on the book, some thoughts, some quotes, some ink samples, some washi tape, currently inked, fountain pens. I wrote about a trip that we took here, physical TBR, lots of TBRs. I'm not great at keeping up with the reading spreads, so there's that. I put a bunch of tea tags in here. These are notes on a crochet project. And yeah, that's kind of what that looks like, and that's what I was doing for a few months. Obviously, I had a lot of missed pages, which is a little bit upsetting, and sometimes I was better at keeping up with it than others. But I also found that I was keeping this as kind of precious, and I didn't want to write just whatever notes in here. I really wanted it to look nice, which was holding me back from using it, unfortunately. I did start to try and keep up with it a little bit better. There's still days that had nothing and empty spreads. But then I started to feel restricted by the size of this. So I was feeling like I couldn't actually fit enough on a single page, and I was getting frustrated because there's so much of this page that's taken up by stuff that I wasn't necessarily using, and so I kind of started falling off of using it for a while, and that's when I decided to get a bigger commonplace book. I'll come back and tell you what I use this for now. Let's switch gears for a second. So this is housing my Hobonichi cousin. So this is the same layout as the A6, but it is an A5. So I got this purely for the bigger size, and I got this on sale because the year is pretty far in, and I really wish I had gotten the half-year version, the Avec, because a lot of these pages are wasted because most of that information was in my other book. But I will show you how I use this, and I have a lot of room for experimentation here too. The monthly pages I am now using for my reading tracking. Like I said, that was in here before, and I moved it into my commonplace book because that information made the most sense here. And so, like I said, I like to write when I start or finish a book on each day, and then every Monday I will write down where I'm at in each book that I'm reading. And then I'm experimenting with the weekly pages still, but the idea is to use them as memory keeping. I just will write about things that happen during my day and during that week. I just started this a few weeks ago, but clearly having a hard time keeping up with it. But it's something that I really do want to keep up with, so hopefully I can get the hang of that. Like I said, a lot of the front of this book is empty, but I am going through backfilling some of the pages, so that 23 books for 2023 tracker that was in my small commonplace book I've moved here. the books that I've acquired, that list is moved here, and I have plans to move a lot of other pages as well. And so in January, I'm putting all of my reading spreads together. And then I was thinking about using February as kind of a place to write about content, so like YouTube videos and stuff. I was originally planning to go back starting in April and backfilling all the pages, but I kind of realized I didn't really want to rewrite all of that information because it's still in the other book, and it didn't really feel important to me to backfill a lot of that. And then I was fully transitioned into this book at this point, I think. So this is what I like about the size of this, is I can see so much and I can fit so much onto a page and a spread. So this is more reading tracking. So this is when I read Happy Place. I've got a bunch of notes as I'm reading through the book. I will write those down here, and then when I finish the book, I'll go through and I'll write some quotes down. I wasn't great at using it last month, but August I have renewed interest in this, and I'm trying to focus on using it more. So the way I'm doing the monthly page in here now is to have books that I'm reading here, books that I've bought here, and books that I've checked out from the library here. And then on the right-hand side of this page here, I have an index of the month. For each of these days, I write down what's on the page. I'm also keeping track of the index in the front of the book, but as you can see, it takes me a long time to flip there to actually look at this. So it's actually really helpful for me to have that list here as well. This is what this looks like. This is from my August TBR video, and this is my TBR prompts for the month. This is from 10,000 Stitches, which is a book I just finished. This is notes on coloring pages that I was doing, some coloring books to remember which colors I was using. This is another book that I'm listening to. These were some notes that were somewhat related on various topics, so I put them all on one page. And this is kind of where I'm trying to stretch my comfort levels with commonplacing, and I really like the way that this page turned out. And you can see I'm starting to use colored dots here, those zig markers with the dot ends. I'm starting to use those to mark the type of content that's on each page. I'd really like to get some stickers so I don't have to carry around like a whole bundle of markers all the time, but those are coming. I actually did just order some today, so they're on their way. Oh, and this is actually something to note. So I did this page for 10,000 Stitches, and I filled up the page before I finished reading the book. So I went to the next empty page and I wrote down the name of the book, continued, and down here I wrote August 7th. So that means this content continues on August 7th, like you would use a page number. And then this means that this content is continued previously on August 3rd. This is what I have currently been focusing on, which is my Hobonichi wish list. This, I have written down some pricing information from the Hobonichi website so that I can compare it to the costs of buying from dealers in the US. And so I can compare those prices. I've written down what I need for next year and things that I want for next year. So this helps me like focus and prioritize. These are the things that I need, and these are things that I might add. Especially if I need to get to a free shipping threshold, that's an option. And then every day Hobonichi is releasing information on this 2024 lineup, which will release in September. And so when I see something that I like, I am writing it down here. So I make a note of the collection and the things from that collection that I like, so that when the day comes to purchase things, I can look here, make sure I get the things that I need, and then I can look through these and kind of pick out things that I want. And yeah, so that's kind of how I'm using this right now. Previously, what I was doing was trying to match the day to when that information happened in the month. So like a bunch of July is empty, but on July 17th or July 18th, I started reading Happy Place. So in my mind, it had to be on this page. It had to match the date here. And that was really holding me back, and it was making me skip a lot of pages. And I honestly didn't really like the way that that was working. So now what I'm doing is I'm just starting on page 1 and I'm just going to the next blank page. I actually really like that. It's a small It's a small difference, but I really like the way that I'm using this now. But I have noticed then the dates don't really matter, and I'm noticing that these headers are kind of getting in the way. So that's something to think about for next year. So I'll come back to this, which was my commonplace book, and I'll show you what I'm using it for now. So I switched in July to using this for daily logging. So now, instead of a commonplace book, every day, I will just write about my day. Anything that I want to write down, I'm just writing down. I'm using the monthly page as a goals page now. I previously had that in my commonplace book, but it made more sense to me now to put that in my journal. Some days are just pen, some days have pictures, some days have more thoughts than others, and I really like the flexibility of that. I do wish that this was bigger though, because I want to be able to just write literally anything that pops into my brain, so that's also something to think about for next year. Yeah, and then the last part of my system is this guy. And I kind of lied to you when I said that I started the year with just one journal, because I started the year with this. This is my original commonplace book. This is a Leuchtturm 1917 A6 notebook, and it is a grid. This is what the inside looks like. And it's just a notebook. It has numbered pages and an index in the front, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Yeah, this is kind of the original commonplace book. So, ink log, of course, some random to-do lists. And so a lot of lists that were in here went into my commonplace book, but a lot of things didn't, because sometimes I just wanted to write random notes down, and these aren't really things that I necessarily want to reference in the future. And so I actually really like having this notebook in addition to my commonplace book. And for a long time, I was really conflicted about having this and a commonplace book, because it kind of felt like I was being mean to this notebook. But the thing that's really nice about this is I can take this everywhere with me. You can see it's pretty beat up. This is what I take out of the house. Everything else pretty much can just stay home. The way that I think about it is this is kind of a catch-all for lists and notes and whatever I want to write down, but maybe has things that I don't want to reference in the future. But if something in here is important to me and I want to reference it in the future, I'll move that information into my big commonplace book. So that's kind of the idea here, is I can just take random notes and write about random things, or plan things in here that I'm going to put into my commonplace book. Like, I literally have a list in here called Things to Commonplace. But I really like this. I think it's really handy to have, and I'm getting close to done with it. And yeah, I feel like I feel happy about my system now. And I'm happy to have kind of figured out what's working and what's not working for me, so that I know what to order for next year. So yeah, that's kind of what I have now. I don't know if I should go into my plans for next year now or later, because I think I have it figured out now. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you now what my current thoughts are. So I have all of these wonderful journals and planners, but for next year, I'm planning to continue the weeks exactly how I'm currently using it. So this will be for my daily and weekly planning, and I will use the calendar for content planning and the back pages for content planning also. So I really like having my planner in its own thing, because then I can just leave this at home and I can completely neglect it when I don't need to plan things, like when I go on trips or whatever. I can just do bare minimum in here if that's what I need. And I love that this is just contained by itself. Love that. So next year, the Hobonichi weeks will be continuing exactly the same. This, which is my long form journal, I will not be repurchasing the same planner, which is the Midori One Day One Page, but I will continue just doing morning pages and long form journaling in a regular notebook. That's not going to be anything special. It's just going to be whatever notebook I have on hand. So it's kind of staying, but not in the same planner type. The pocket notebook is staying. However, I think I will be switching to field notes, because I like how few pages there are, And I kind of like the idea of just dumping some information into there and saying like, okay, I'm done with this now, let's move on to a new one, instead of having just one notebook for the entire year. And it's possible that I could change my mind on that, but that's the idea. This is going to remain as a catch-all, like a portable catch-all that I can write anything in. It can be a mess, whatever, and it's not meant for referencing in the long term. So that's the idea with that. The commonplace book will also be staying. The idea for my commonplace book is that it will be for notes that I would like to reference in the future. So it's possible that, you know, next year or years and years down the line, I'm like, oh, I need to look at notes on that book that I read. I read it in this year, and I want to be able to go like, oh, I read that book in 2023. I can go pull out my 2023 notebook, open up to the index, find where it's at, flip to the page, and boom, there's the information that I need. That's the idea for the commonplace book. However, I'm not going to use a cousin because I don't think I need this many pages, and they definitely don't need to be dated. And I was kind of researching other notebooks and going back and forth on what I might like, but someone actually suggested to me Hobonichi Day Free, which I think is actually what I'm going to do. So instead of the A5 cousin, I'm going to do the A5 Day Free, which looks just like this. The page looks just like this, except for there's no date, and this, like, there's no header up here, and there's no timeline here. It's just grid, and then it has this invisible line down the middle here, and then there's still some things at the bottom, like the quotes, and that's it. And then in the front, you have this setup in the front. You have the calendars, and then you just have basically plain note pages in the back, which I like because I'll still use the calendar for tracking books. So I'll still use the calendar in this way, but then I will just have pages in the back. And the big important thing for me is that the pages in the back are numbered. So that way I can build a index in order to organize this for future reference. So that's something that's really important to me. And I'm actually really glad that someone suggested to me to use the Day Free because I think it's going to be great. So that's the plan for my commonplace book, and that will be my like long-term reference. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to my brain, and that's what matters. And then currently I'm using this for daily logging, like I mentioned, and I really like this, but it's too small. So all I'm going to do is, instead of the A6, I'm going to do the A5 for 2024. So I'll do just the dated A5 cousin for my daily logging next year, because the other thing about that is that I'll continue to use the weeklies for memory keeping, and it makes a lot of sense to me to do my memory keeping and my daily logging in the same journal. Like, it doesn't make sense to me really to memory keep in my commonplace book because that doesn't really match for me, but that's what I'm doing for now, and I'm going to stick it out for the rest of the year with what I have right now. But that's the idea for next year. I also I'm gonna do the A5, but I really want to do the A5 Hone, which is the hardcover version. It looks just like these, but it has a hardcover, kind of like how the Weeks has a hardcover on it. So that's the only difference. So I'll have the Weeks for planning, the A5 Hone, hopefully, for daily logging and memory keeping. I will have the A5 Day Free for commonplacing, and that's my long-term reference commonplace book. I'll have the pocket notebook, which will hopefully be, or likely be, field notes. That will be for short-term commonplacing. And then a journal, just for morning pages and brain dumping and that sort of thing. Yeah, I really hope that made sense. If it doesn't make sense, I'm gonna have a really great time editing this and trying to make it make sense. Let me know if you have suggestions for me, or tell me what you're changing in your 2024 setup. And yeah, if you've used any of these, tell me how you liked them. And as I do my next system for next year, I will share that again as well. Hopefully that's useful information to you. So thanks for joining me for this video, and I will see you in the next one.